Hello, everybody. This is Blake Miles with Catalyst Program on the Boots to the Boardroom podcast, and we're joined today by Gary Russell and James Braye, two of our most recent graduates from the previous cohort, and we're going to be talking to them about their experiences in the Air Force as special operators, since I can jokingly say that because I'm a special operator too, or whatever that means, but they bring a very interesting background, and they were in our previous cohort. They did an amazing job and stepping up their game and learning a bunch about the business world and learning how to speak that language. So we're going to be talking with them about some of their experiences going through the military, lessons they picked up in that world, and also, more importantly, their experiences since leaving or starting to leave the military world and looking at what the future holds in the business environment. So without further ado, Gary, I'll have good to see you first. So we'll talk with you and just do a quick introduction and where you're coming from and where you're at now.
Yeah, thanks for the introduction. I will make one minor correction.
You do. I'm always up for that.
Special warfare before anybody out there gets on it.
That is critical. That is critical. That's the Navy would probably correct me on that one too.
Yeah,
so
we're special. Either way, we're special. Just know that.
Special in warfare, even.
Yeah.
Not just operations. Operations is boring. Warfare is like that.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having us. Thanks for the introduction. Happy to be here. So my background is as a TACP, as Blake said. Worked with Braye for a little while here, and in the guard side, active duty background for about 12 years. Then I did the guard thing for a handful more, so about 15 years total service. I currently live in New Palestine, Indiana, which is where I grew up. So family of 4 kids living out here on a little slice of heaven, and currently my most recent job as a civilian. So I've been a civilian for about 4 years now. I've done some business development, some management consulting, and now actually interviewing with a couple of positions as a result of my time with the Catalyst. So excited to dive into that a little bit more.
Excellent. Thank you, Gary. James, your turn.
Thanks for the introduction, Blake. I'm happy to be here. Happy to talk about the Catalyst and a little bit about myself. Gary and I worked with each other for about 4 or 5 years. He came from active duty to the Guard. That's where my unit's been at the entire time for my service as a TACP out of Terre Haute, Indiana. I was in that position for about 12 years, and then I just recently switched over to be a recruiter for a little while. Made a nice little shift of life for the family, and made some decisions to kind of be a little bit more present. As we all know, being TACP or in special operations or special warfare, you are gone a lot. And this was, I got a wife at home we're expecting baby number 2 in December, and we have a feral little toddler running around the house. So it's pretty awesome. Life's been super busy. But yeah, I'm living over in Indianapolis right now, doing the recruiting gig for a little while. And as I'm kind of reaching towards my next ETS date, I'm starting to look into some options. And that's how I kind of stumbled into the program of the Catalyst. Gary introduced it to me, and I figured I've got about a year left, and let's kind of start figuring out what that next step's going to look like in life. And the Catalyst is definitely opened a lot of doors in regards of meeting new people and making new connections, and allowing me to learn a little bit more about myself as well, which has been a super awesome experience. So
beautiful. Well, thank you both for that introduction. You guys, the other people always do a better job at introducing themselves than I do, obviously. So that works out well. And for those of you who are new viewers to this or first time, the Catalyst program is a veteran transition program that emphasizes teaching veterans how to translate what they did in the military into a language that the private sector can both understand and find value in. And the primary way we do that is through our cohorts. And we've got partnerships with Indiana Wesleyan University, Southern Methodist University, and by the time this broadcasts or publishes, whatever the term is, we'll have a couple of new more announcements. It's exciting to be working on. So we have our partnerships with the schools. We build our veteran transition curriculum around some of their areas of expertise and put out a cohort which allows veterans and their spouses to come in and learn from veterans that have been successful in the various MBA disciplines, so everything from marketing to finance, accounting, consulting, project management, anything that you would pick up from an MBA. We have a snapshot taught by either veterans or folks that have been successful in the business world, and they have a passion for teaching veterans and helping veterans out. So we've got cohorts coming up in the future. They're all remote over Zoom, and they're from my experience, having gone through myself, and I'm sure Gary and James will talk about it a bit more from their perspective, but learning how to speak that language and take what I did in the military and turn it into something that just simply makes sense in the private sector and is seen as valuable. It took a lot of effort and a lot of time, which would have accelerated had I had access to something like the Catalyst when I got out. And that's been my primary driving factor for a lot of what I've been doing the last 10 years, is building things I wish I had access to when I got out. So with all that said, I kind of want to ask you both, and we'll keep this kind of like an open table discussion best as we can, doing it over Zoom. But when did you guys join the military? What was kind of your catalyst, to pun intended, that got you in the military and got you started down that path? And when was that? Whoever wants to go first. Gary's to my far left, so if you want to go first most of the time, that's up to you.
Yeah, so I have a story that's probably similar to a lot of people. We didn't have a lot of money growing up, and I was in a small town, and probably needed to get away from the people I was hanging around with, and nothing bad. I just, they weren't going anywhere. So that military for me was just kind of my way out of my environment. And I thought, hey, I'll get some college paid for, get a steady paycheck, and get out of my hometown, go travel for a little bit. I had some uncles that were in the Marines and the Army, so they suggested that maybe the Air Force was a good option. So I did that. And then, of course, I talked to the recruiter. He shows me some cool YouTube videos of guys jumping out of planes. Fast forward, I become a TACP, and then I spent all my time with the Army anyway. So that's kind of why I joined. I thought I was going to do, 4 years and come back home, and that turns into 12 years and a couple deployments and living in Alaska and Germany and all over the world, and definitely getting to travel a lot. So I appreciate, I think I achieved my goal of getting out of my home environment and learning some things and new perspectives and meeting a lot of different people, and obviously the skills that you learn in the military. And then kind of like James was talking about, after 12 years or so and grinding for a while, it was time for me to kind of, come back. By then I had 3 kids, so it was time for me to come back home and let them grow up with their cousins and see their grandma and grandpa a little bit more. And happened to have an opportunity with the Indiana Air Guard. There was a TACP position, so I came back and I did the AGR thing for a little bit there, and then as life does, it just kind of evolves along the way, and had some opportunities to separate and take on some civilian positions and work from home for a little while, so even more time with the family. And so that's where my focus is now, is just being the dad and partner and all that, so I can spend as much time with them as possible. But I've been remote for the last few years, and it's been nice. But I will say I definitely do miss getting to talk with you, Blake and James, and do the Catalyst and some of these other things. And it is nice to still have that connection with the military in some way, and be able to connect with the guys and still have that kind of brotherhood and that connection. Because that's, I would say, if you talk to most people who are out, that's probably what everyone says they miss the most. So that's kind of how I get my fix. But
No, it's great. I'll chime in real quickly that missing that team room feel is, there's something that's tangible about that one. And, this definitely, this feels a little bit like it, you know, I never did a team room remotely, but I think this would probably be what it feels like. What about you, James?
Yeah, kind of similar to Gary. You know, like you said, probably most people have that same kind of line that they're like, yeah, I was really on the fence of like what I wanted to do when I was going to grow up. As I was graduating high school, I was like, you know, I've known that I was going to join the military. I just didn't know at what capacity I was going to go, you know, whether it be the guard or whether it be active duty. I've got a lot of stake in my hometown, so I kind of was like, I'm not entirely sure if I want to go active or not. So I ended up joining the guard out of Terre Haute, Indiana, which is just about an hour and a half away from my hometown. And they had a TACP unit there at the time. And so really I was like, you know, this seems like it's going to be a good fit for me. And, you know, when I got to meet everybody that I was going to be working with, and, you know, you immediately felt that brotherhood and that team room aspect. Just as a brand new person, you're like, wow, this is like next level. You know, I've grown up wrestling, so I've had that like same mentality of all the sports that I've played. You've had the team room aspect, and you're with people that you're in grinding hard every single day with, you know, whether it be in practice or outside of practice, you're kind of working toward the same goal. And then once I joined the TACP unit, I really felt just that on a whole nother level. Spent probably about 4 years running around to all sorts of different training environments, just to be qualified to be a TACP and a JTAC, which was a really good experience for me because I was able to get out of my hometown. I didn't just get stuck with doing a 1 week in a month, 2 weeks out of the year thing. I was gone pretty much 7 to 10 months out of the year for my first 5 or 6 years, which was perfect and everything that I wanted to do in the first place, because I got to travel around. I got to get different experiences that I knew Evansville, Indiana wasn't going to offer me at the time. And then I started going to school a little bit. And once I got hired on as an AGR, I ended up moving into Indianapolis, had a deployment, and, you know, just like the whole aspect of why I wanted to join really just ended up turning out to be like college wasn't going to be able to give me the things that I wanted at 18 years old, and the military was going to give me the things that I really needed when I was 18 years old. So yeah, now, you know, it's living the life of a recruiter is it's a pretty nice little lifestyle. I get to have some flexibility to be at home when I need to be at home, and be present with the kids, which is fantastic. I get to help the wife, which is great for her. She gets to relax a little bit more. And as we prepare for baby number 2, I'm starting to, you know, take a step back and think, you know, where's the next 20 years of my life going to be at, so I can continue to be a present father and a present husband for my family, and make sure that, you know, I get to be at home to raise the kids. You know, that's the ultimate reason why I shifted careers. It was, you know, being gone even 5 months out of the year is still just for training. That's not even for a deployment. You're like, this is becoming too much. I want to be home and present. So that's really where my motivation came from for that.
It sounds very similar to me, and I'm not surprised that it's common across the board for, you know,
Yes.
That seems to be the usual drive and direction of things for a lot of guys. So, all right, awesome. And so, one quick thing, AGR, I know what it means. I can't remember the acronym, but for anyone that's listening that doesn't know what that means, it's basically just working full time in a guard unit under orders to do a specific task. What is AGR? Is it Active Guard Reserve?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, same pay, same benefits. You have TRICARE Prime, all that stuff. So
Yeah.
It's like you're just basically you get put on active duty orders for the length of your contract, and then basically whenever your contract is ready to renew, they just extend it for the next contract.
We'll say the major difference is when you're active duty, you can't exactly quit. When you're AGR, you can relinquish your position. So
Yeah,
I have done it.
I didn't know that one. I didn't. That's interesting. No, all right. And so, and the other thing that speaking of acronyms and all that, I had this conversation yesterday with someone from the TACP Foundation, and I think I've probably had it 3 other times in my life. The difference between JTAC and TACP. I think I told you guys this.
The age-old question.
It is the age-old question.
The very simple answer is TACP is the career field. JTAC is a qualification. So you don't necessarily even have to be a TACP to be a JTAC. JTAC is when you're actually, it's to be a JTAC, you have to go through on the job training. You have to go to the actual JTAC qualification course, which was in Vegas. I don't know where it is now. And then you have to come back to your unit, do more on the job qualifications, get an evaluation, and then there's a periodic evaluation after that to maintain your currency. So, but once you come out of the schoolhouse as a baby airman or a cross trainee, you're a TACP, and you're always a TACP, unless you be a trader and be like James and go be a recruiter or something.
Which is an option.
Actually, I'm still technically.
If
we want to get technical here.
You're right. That's another good question too, and it'll go into my next line of questioning, I suppose. I'm coming at this like a prosecutor. I got to be professional and everything. So, from your guys' perspective, what would you say the role of a TACP is, and in a simple paragraph type answer? Explain what that is, what you guys do.
You want to take this one, James?
Hey, it's all you, buddy.
So I would say the rehearsed answer is to be the liaison between the Air Force and the Army, to provide firepower and command and control and reconnaissance and all these things to the battlefield, to the whoever the ground commander is. So that could be a Marine, that could be a Air Force or Army, that could be conventional, it could be unconventional. So we are there to provide close air support. We can provide fire support, surface to surface fires. I mean, even naval gunfire and all that. So we're there to provide that. The difference between like maybe the way the Marines do it in the Army is that firepower is not always organic to the Army. So like close air support, a lot of the aircraft belong to the Air Force. So that's where we come in as the liaison to speak that language. So the short answer is that we provide close air support and support of ground combat maneuver units. But really it's a lot more than that, because as that liaison, as you can imagine, if you're on a deployment for 9 months, you're not dropping bombs for 9 months straight. There's quiet periods, or maybe you're not even doing that on that deployment, or maybe there's 2-3 weeks, a month that you're not doing that. So a lot of it is being that liaison and conveying, you're a subject matter expert. So you're there to provide that knowledge to the combat team. So, you have your S3 and your intel and your, electronic warfare team and your fire support team. We're another one of those subject matter expert teams. They're there to, explain how that tool can be most effectively used within a mission or an operation or over the course of an entire deployment or something like that. So I will say one of the common experiences as a TACP, especially on the conventional side, if you come in and they don't really know you, there's always that like there's the Air Force guy or whatever. Or if you're like a consultant, which I've done that, it's like you come in as a consultant and they're like, oh man, this guy's going to come in and try to tell us how to do stuff. That usually lasts for a short period of time, and then they see what you provide, and then it's like, oh, hell yeah, we're happy to have this person as part of the team. It's this whole nother arsenal that we didn't have before. So I will say it's definitely, you have to earn your trust with the teams. Usually, if you're more organic to the team, or you've had some time to prepare and do some whether it's a JRTC or an NTC or whatever kind of training exercise leading up to it, or if you're just part of that unit, it's a little different experience, but you still often have to kind of prove yourself, I would say.
That was an excellent answer, Gary. It was very concise and comprehensive at the same time. Did you want to add anything to it, James?
He just Googled that.
He just read it. He's got the
No, I mean that's spot on. You know, we pretty much paint the picture when it comes down to the, you know, on deployments. You typically deploy as a single entity, but you deploy as a unit or whatever. So you got, you know, 5, 6, 10 dudes. Kind of depends on where you're going, what you're doing, and what the mission is. So everybody's kind of working in their own separate area of responsibility. So, and your intent is to kind of paint that picture for the air to ground piece and incorporate everything from surface to air and air to surface ultimately, and making sure that, you know, we might not be dropping bombs for 9 months on a 9-month deployment, but you're integrating everything that comes to the fight when it comes to sensors looking at the ground, to bombs hitting the ground, to, you know, maybe even air resupplies that are coming over and going into other areas. So the liaison piece is the much more technical version of our job for sure. The fun part is getting to drop bombs, but the administrative and technical part is sitting down and doing the hours and hours of extensive planning and preparation to incorporate that piece into the fight and make sure we're being used the way we need to be.
Yeah, I would say 20-year-old Gary and 20-year-old James wouldn't want to hear this, but the most value that I got as now a professional out of being a TACP was that liaison and, you know, being part of that team and kind of sharing whatever your knowledge is with the rest of the team and figuring out how to integrate it into the grander scheme of things.
It's not uncommon for a brand new, I mean, I'll say a brand new airman, but they have we'll say less than 5 years of experience, and they're a fully qualified JTAC, but they get put out with a team and their entire job is to talk to, you know, pretty much anyone that's over an 03 and tell them exactly what they're providing them and how they can be incorporated into the fight. And I mean, for my first deployment, when I showed up, I'm a 6-year, 7-year E5, and I'm talking to an 05 and a few E9s and a whole lot more brass sitting in the room with 30 minutes of preparation on telling them what I'm going to be able to provide for them on a route that I just showed up to be a part of randomly. So you get a very good sense of like urgency for one, because you have to be able to know what you're talking about in the moment and not have any time to prepare. But you get comfortable talking to people that are way in front of you when it comes to time in the service or experience. And then, you know, it definitely applies to like the consulting realm, because you become comfortable talking to high stakeholders or CEOs, CFOs, or whatever the case may be. And you're just like, I've done this 100 times and this is relatable. So you just get comfortable with knowing what you're doing, which is good.
Yeah. I would say one other thing that's probably the last thing that's interesting as well is that you'll train a certain way, but there's a lot of different TACP units, whether it's conventional or on the soft side. You're training to every mission set. So you're training how to fight in Alaska, how to fight in the jungle, how to fight with an armor maneuver unit, infantry, cavalry, airborne. So that's, to me, I think that was one of the coolest parts is I'd go to one unit and learn the infantry mission and then go to a different unit and I'm deploying with strikers. They have to learn this. And then you go to a different unit and you're in Alaska at an airborne unit, jumping in the snow and learning how to, you know, keep your batteries warm when it's -60. So I think that's one of the coolest parts too, is that you get to learn how to fight a lot of different ways. And there's several different ways to do things. So
That's great. And you guys are reading my mind on that skill sets translation piece. I was going to go to that next. So you guys you're already ahead of me. That's perfect. And I just wanted to add to one experience I had with the JTAC was awesome. Brandon, great guy. I doubt he'll see this, but if he does, pleasure working with you, Brandon. He was, and like you guys said, it was great having him around because he was that added firepower, not just physical firepower, but intellectual firepower. And, being able to bring that to any table that we go to was a big win. And, going into that skill sets concept, I think that's kind of the critical piece. And I think you guys are already seeing it and thinking about it differently is your experience in being thrown into those different environments with needing to be able to speak to higher level leadership extemporaneously without any real preparation and do it confidently without any sort of putting doubt or fear in the leadership's head about what's this guy going to be able to do. And then also picking up new tactics, new techniques, new procedures at a whim, just being thrown into a random environment and then being expected to actually go out in the field and perform. And I would imagine it's anytime you're calling for fire, it's usually because there's bullets zipping around you and it's high intensity and you need to be able to maintain a sense of calm talking on the radios and speaking to whoever it is you're talking to. So, and you guys, since you guys already touched on it, that piece is definitely a consulting type mindset, consulting type persona. What did you guys pick up going through the course in relation to, let me back up. What do you think was like the first kind of recognition of seeing that connective tissue between the things you did while you were in the military to what the business world finds value in and what they want to get out of, people that they bring onto their team with high expectations of, lots of money being on the line and lots of risk being on the table. Whoever wants to jump on that grenade first.
So I think my perspective, I wouldn't call it unique, but as far as coming straight from a transition into a program like the Catalyst. So I had worked in the corporate civilian sector for a few years before then. So I had some perspective already, but for me, it was more of a reinforcement. I think as we kind of touched on, when you join a career field like TACP, when you're younger, you're more focused on like the tactical part of things. Like you want to go out there and you want to be on the ground and you want to do all the fun, exciting stuff. And I always thought in the back of my mind, I'm like, this is awesome, but I don't really know how any of these skills translate. But what you learn later is there are some technical skills, but it's a lot of those soft skills that it's hard to put those on paper. But when you get in front of people, they just ooze out of you. And I think when you're in interviews or just having conversations or networking events or whatever it is, when you run into people and actually get to have a conversation, they can feel it from you. And like James talked about, it's that being able to know your job and know it well, being a high performer, being a go-getter, being a leader, being able to carry yourself a certain way. For me, when I was young, and James talks about being in front of colonels and high-level leadership at a young age, you really quickly get that feedback when their face starts glazing over or they just don't want to talk to you. You're like, all right, I need to be more concise, or all right, I need to bring this different type of information. So I learned that by the fire. I was baptized in the fire, and for me, that was probably the most valuable thing that I learned as far as taking a skill from the military and translating it to a civilian skill or attribute, because I know that, first of all, I have to know my stuff that I'm talking about. Second of all, I have to be confident and I have to be concise and get to my point and get to it quickly in a way that they're going to digest it best. So now I'm doing that with executives or directors or business leaders or whoever it is, and I'm I'm constantly thinking about those past experiences where, know your job, be confident, and have a great delivery. So for me, it's those soft skills. As far as how the catalyst kind of comes into play here, for me, it was just reinforcement. So what's cool about the catalyst is, for the most, I would say, correct me if I'm wrong, Blake, but 95% of all the instructors are veterans. So to me, it was really cool to see so many veterans come in as guest instructors and talk about 25 different topics as they relate to business. And most of them are CEOs or presidents or high level in their company. So speaking at that high level, and them telling you exactly how their time in the military translates, or how to say certain things, or what skills were valuable to them. And it's a lot of the same themes that you see popping up, and it's that same stuff we talked about. It's, hey, work hard, know your job, have confidence, be that. I think a lot of people that come from the military are those high achieving, go-getter, high functioning individuals. Especially in business, you have to be that. And I think civilians who have never served, they are not used to that. For us in the military, we think that's normal, but to be that, confident, great leader, and be able to walk in a room and talk to anyone at any level with confidence, I think is a really valuable skill that a lot of civilians don't necessarily have. They haven't, like James was talking about, those experiences that he explained, most civilians don't get that, especially at 18, 19, 20 years old. So when we were learning and shaking off the rust and learning all these things at that age, these people are just now doing it as they're in their 30s, getting into those higher positions. So I think, that's extremely valuable, and a lot of veterans don't realize that. And then, the last interview I did, there was a lot of focus on leadership. Leadership skills are not as abundant as people might think. But as a veteran, you often are put in a position to be a leader of several people. The positions that I'm later into my career now, and I'm interviewing for, more senior level positions, and, they're saying, oh, you're going to be in charge of like 2 or 3 people. Is that okay? And I'm thinking, like, man, I've led 50 people up a mountain with like no resources. This is no problem for me. So I think it's a lot of those soft skills that translate well. But for me, with the catalyst, it was just hearing all those veterans who have been there and done that and are doing it as a civilian, that just kind of reaffirmed that for me. And it's empowering to see.
Excellent. James, you want to jump in on that too?
Yeah, absolutely. So I haven't dabbled much in the civilian market yet. So my experience with that is going to be a little bit different just from what I took away from the catalyst. Mine was, I was searching to find how my skills are more relatable to the civilian market, and how I can make it make sense to them, because, you start talking about some of the things that we do on a tactical level, and even on a technical level as well as a TACP, you're getting like a blank stare back. It's getting your feedback is like, they're looking at you like, I don't even know what that means. So, that's kind of where what I wanted to get out of the catalyst was like, hey, how are my skills more applicable, and to what, job I want to go for in the civilian market, and how do I make it make sense for them? So as we were going through that, we talked about resumes. Every single guest instructor, whether they had military background themselves, or it was from, maybe a family member had it, they just had a lot of experience in the civilian side. They talked about their experiences and told us, every single person, like, you have a certain type of skill that no one else has if they've never been in the military. And that one particular thing branched out to be ultimately everything that Gary talked about. You're talking about ultimately flexibility, leadership, and understanding how to make decisions. You go to someone that's never been in the military and you bring them a problem, not saying that this is everyone, but they make a decision probably a lot slower than what we will. They're going to think about it a little longer. They're going to make sure that this is, they're going to research everything in and out to make sure it's the right decision. Where, particularly in my career, it's better just to make a decision now and run with it, do everything you can to see what happens. And then, hey, if it's not the right decision, then now I know I didn't make the right decision. Now I can move on and I can go forward, where the other person's still staring out the window like, I need to make a decision, but I don't know what to do. We've learned how to adapt through flexibility and just saying like, hey, not everything's going to work out. Whenever we sit here and have a 24-hour op order come down and we're going to talk about how this mission is going to get ran, we know as soon as we step foot out the door, that mission's not going to go how we talked about it for the last 24 hours. It's just because we want to war game everything in our heads to make this decision, but ultimately the decision's going to be made when we're in the moment. You got to run with it. From the catalyst, I pulled out, a lot of like putting a name to a lot of things that I've already done. And one of them is you learn emotional intelligence at a very young point in your career, because everyone is pretty much highly anxious and high performers, and they're all just getting after it. So whenever you're getting that feedback from people real time, you learn how to adjust what you need to talk to them about or how you need to approach it with them and kind of move forward. So that way the mission's getting completed in the ways that we need it done. And that applies to your civilian side when you go and talk to somebody that's on, the CEO level or CFO or your high stakes leadership or whatever the case may be. You learn to kind of pick up through the conversation on what these people want, but how you need to address problems or answer questions through the conversation instead of just being directly blunt. Some people don't like that, where we come from that background where I can just look at Gary and be like, hey, here's X, Y, and Z. I need this done. And he's like, okay, cool. Well, somebody else in the civilian side might be like, whoa, that was kind of aggressive. Like, I'm not used to that. So it's kind of, we apply a lot of that emotional intelligence day in and day out from all of our background. And whenever I went to the Catalyst, it was like all of these names were getting put to the things that we've done in our careers. And I'm like, wow, that makes sense now. Like, this is crazy. There's names for these. So.
Yeah, that's, and you guys mentioned, touching on the perspective of all of it, because being asked to do, like, I think Gary, you were talking about it, being asked to be in charge of 2 or 3 people, and you immediately have that thought of, well, yeah, taking 50 people up a mountain before with no resources. I think that perspective concept is a big one that it can be a double-edged sword, I think. And I think I experienced this, is getting frustrated with what I thought I could be doing or what I thought I was capable of versus what was expected of me. But I think it comes back to that. Are you able to verbalize it? Are you able to actually put these concepts in a language that's understood? But once you're able to speak that language, all of those perspectives based on past experiences amount to a wealth of knowledge and experience, and a treasure trove of examples of, yeah, I've done this before, and here's why it's valuable from a business perspective. And so I was wondering if there's any specific, aside from the 50 people up the mountain, is there any other examples you guys can think of that, like, having gone through the cohort and Gary's situation, had a number of interviews since then, or a number of business conversations, and James, from your side, even on the recruiting angle, I know that could still come to play. Is there any perspective shifts that you've noticed after the cohort that you found valuable to relate to?
Definitely. So I was again in kind of a unique position where I had just had my contract at my previous company ends, and I'm actively in the recruitment process for whatever the next position is going to be. So I'm just soaking all this information in, and what has helped me a lot is just continuing to learn how to speak that language as a civilian business person or as a corporate business person. And that has been a huge addition to my arsenal, because instead of having, what I find myself doing is I'm speaking about things, and I don't, like James said, I don't know necessarily what it's called or what that part of business is called, or I don't know finance terms, or I don't know accounting terms, or I don't know whatever it is. Now I feel like because we cover so many topics in depth across all of business, I'm way more educated on how everything is synchronized across all different departments and categories of business or whatever. So now when I'm having those conversations with people, I feel like it's a more intellectual conversation instead of, me just trying to be a translator from what's in my brain to what's in theirs. And I still will, sometimes I'll say words. I forget what we did. After action report, I think I called a hot wash or something. And they were like, and in my head, I'm like, why did I say hot wash? Gosh. And I'm like, yeah, like an after action report. And they're like, what's that? I'm like, in my head, I'm like, what do you call it? Still like refining it just a little bit and kind of cleansing my brain of some of the things that has been beaten into my intellect for the last 15 years. So I think that for the catalyst, that was a huge part of it for me, was just seeing how everything truly ties together. Because while I feel comfortable as a project manager, I'm still learning how to speak that language. I've done the fundamentals. I've got my education is in project management, but seeing how it actually is applied as a civilian and hearing the terminology that they use, a lot of it's the same. It's just a different word. But in the areas where I wasn't as strong, we did a artificial intelligence class, we did a marketing class. So a lot of those things I'm not as sharp on, or I'm not as up to speed. So being able to arm myself in that way has been highly valuable.
Great answer. I like that one. Jay, what about you, James?
Well, I think Gary, honestly covered pretty much everything that I was going to end up saying primarily. Because it is like, all of that is true, like as I'm going through college and I'm starting to kind of learn how to translate what all of their, acronyms mean, or whatever they call all of these different terms that are similar to what we do, but just, again, we call it something completely different. So it gets confusing, and helping that translation of like what my resume looks like to them, as an HR department, they're going to ask about what our background looks like. But instead of trying to put a whole bunch of numbers and statistics on everything that we've done in our career, it's really just like giving them a brief understanding of like, hey, I have led people in X capacity to, work towards a project that I was in charge of. So, you're a project manager or a program director or whatever, and really just kind of helping that translation get put down onto paper from all of the instructors that we had that had talked about financial management, to marketing, to consulting, to using AI and how it can help benefit you in your career, whether it be on your resume or in the line of work with the company that you're doing projects for, and developing a professional PowerPoint that you've got all the data, and now you can apply it just straight into AI, and it's just giving you everything that you need, and you've done all the work. It's just helping you kind of piece things together professionally. And for me, while we were going through all of our projects inside of the Catalyst, that's kind of where our careers kind of tied into like our flexibility. It was, we're going to adapt extremely quick because of the environment that we were constantly exposed to. I know Gary and I had called each other probably 4 or 5 times a day, and we're sitting there talking about ideas about different things inside of each consulting project. And then, we start talking about going up and meeting one of the people that we're doing a project for. And when we sat down with them, they were asking us questions about what our careers look like, and what was our intent of coming out of the Catalyst program and how it's going to benefit us. The Catalyst gets you in front of the things that you need to see from a military side to the civilian side and how it's going to apply. And I just think that that's going to be that's a huge game changer for anything that everybody thinks, oh, I got to go to college, I got to get this degree and yada, yada, yada. But when you have a program that's designed for people to get in front of people that want to hire military individuals and boost their network connections. I mean, my phone probably in the last 3 weeks has been connections from everybody that I've met in the Catalyst program, whether it be from an instructor to maybe you, Blake, or from someone that I was in the class with. I mean, it's just been going nonstop. And I couldn't even tell you a number on how many people I've got connected with, because I'm like, man, my phone's just going crazy over getting new connections, which is great. So I hope I answered the question.
No, yeah, definitely. And that snowball of connections is something that I can say from personal experience grows over time, and it's every once in a while you still got to push the snowball up a little hill, but then it starts randomly tumbling again and picking up a lot more, and it's that can be very exciting or exhausting depending on how you approach it. No, and I think you guys touched on the consulting projects, which I'm glad you did, because that was, I think you both demonstrated very well what veterans, especially veterans that have worked at high levels under high risk, high threat type environments, are capable of, and being thrown in those sorts of situations where, for anyone who doesn't know, during the cohorts, we have 3 consulting projects per cohort, and that's where we bring in some business partners and sit down with them and come up with a scope of work. This is me and the business partner come up with a scope of work and put that together with the candidates in mind. And so the candidates will get broken up in different teams, and the business partner will come in and present their business, say, this is what we do, this is how we operate. And then we present the scope of work and, lay that out. And this is what, there's some objective, tangible deliverables that they're hoping to get out of this relationship. And, the candidates will ask questions for about 45 minutes on one night, and then a week later, the business partners will come back and receive presentations from all the teams. And through that process, business partners get a look at either potential hires, but also they're getting some intellectual property they can use or not use at will. But, the big benefits for our candidates is they're getting a look behind the curtain of an industry or an organization they might not have otherwise considered, but they're also getting face time with these business leaders in a real world environment, which is it's not high risk, but there is risk there. So it adds to that, there's a bit of an edge there. So you want to perform well. And I think Gary and James, you both did very well during your consulting projects and demonstrated what that can look like. So with all of that rambling said, to lay the groundwork, if you could talk more a bit about the consulting projects and what your guys' experiences were going through those. And you don't have to name names on the organizations. It's probably don't want to do that just for sake of propriety. But anyway, just let me know what your thoughts were on that.
So I was hoping we were going to talk about this because this was by far my favorite part of the Catalyst. So I'm obviously, no offense to any of the wonderful instructors we had. It was really cool to learn and do all these and sit through different sessions and different topics, and highly valuable. But the opportunity to sit in front of an actual business professional and hear their actual problems that they have or some solution that they're trying to solve for, and then be a part of that is incredible. And as far as I know, no one else is doing that. None of the programs that I've been a part of, I should say. So that to me was the most value for time spent, because like Blake said, you're in front of someone who has an actual problem, and you get to be creative and use all the skills that you've learned through the cohort and maybe that you learned as a veteran, and put all that together with a team to try to come up with tangible solutions that you may actually see come to fruition. So I think that part is cool. James and I, being the go-getters that we are, we decided to, and we were lucky, so not everyone in the cohort was from Indiana. We are, and the consulting partner just so happened to be within a couple
got to
hours.
stick together? Who's got to stick together?
Now, James and I weren't even on the same team when we did this. So we drove a couple hours to go meet with one of the business partners, tour their facility, and actually, get a little bit more insight to what the problems they were trying to solve for the consulting project and beyond. So it was fun, but it was also, to me, James and I talked about this, but to me, that was just like the epitome of, being a business person. It's like, hey, we could sit here and do this project like everyone else, or we could think of a different approach that nobody else has taken or may not even be able to take, and go step out of our comfort zone and be creative, be innovative, and go attack this from a completely different angle. And that, to me, directly comes from our veteran blood. We're not looking at this as a linear problem. It's nebulous, and we're trying to come in at whatever entry point we can find. And I think that on a small scale, it helped us be successful on the project. But in the grand scheme of things, it was immensely valuable, because now, not only are you opening up your network, you're getting behind the scenes look at, I'd never been in a facility like this before. So to be able to see, you have the problem on paper, but to see what it looks like in real life, I think that was incredible. And then for me personally, and I think James has had some conversations, that has turned into actual conversations outside of the cohort. I've moved out of the cohort for a month or so now, and those conversations are ongoing, and have turned into job interviews and things like that. So I think being able to be in front of people, like we talked about in the beginning, your resume and your background and all that is one thing, but being able to get in front of people where they can see those soft skills up close and personal, I think that's hugely valuable. As far as the rest of the, considerations for being on the consulting projects, being able to work on a team of veterans, I think was awesome as well, because everyone comes from different backgrounds as veterans, but also have varying degrees of civilian experience. So I learned just as much from my classmates as I did from doing the consulting projects themselves. So that was also highly valuable to me.
That's great. Yeah. What about you, James?
Yeah, I agree with Gary that doing the actual projects was definitely the most, that was the funnest part about the whole cohort, just because you are getting like a little bit of a competitive edge. All of us have that in us, especially as veterans. It's that competitive nature will never go away. So when you get put on different teams and you're working with the people that, are allocated under your team, and, you're like, well, we got to do better than Bravo team. We got to do better than Charlie, or we got to do this. So it naturally, it kind of spikes up the energy, and everybody kind of brings something new to the table. You're learning, kind of like Gary said, you're learning something from each one of these people at a different capacity, because they're going to have they're coming from all different walks of life. So you're getting different angles of approach where, we're used to seeing like this picture here, and we're coming in at different sides, and instead of just taking that linear path of, hey, well, this problem can be solved this way. It can be, but we also have other ways to make things actually a little bit better if we just look at it a different way, which everyone brought something to the fight with that. And you do get the opportunity, depending on where you're at. If your business directors are going to be, or your business partners are going to be in Indiana, and people that are in Indiana get an opportunity. If anyone gets an opportunity to go meet one of them and sit down and like see their facilities, a face-to-face interaction is it's gonna go miles with these people, just because they're seeing a different side of, I can come in and do a business project for you like we did through the cohort, and they say, oh wow, they did a really good job, or maybe they didn't do as well, and then they sit down with that person and get to meet them face to face. It's a completely different interaction, and you get something very very true from that. And it's like if you just popped your resume down in front of somebody and walked away and said, hey, see ya, that's kind of like take the resume away from them and then sit down in a chair and have legitimate conversations about like what they've done. You're going to get like the opportunity to really talk about how you can benefit them inside of their company. And that's what was such a great experience for Gary and I. I mean, we sat down and it was a 2-hour meeting. And I think for about 90 minutes of that meeting, we talked about what Gary and I's background looked like. And it opened so many doors for us just with one company that it was like, wow, this is amazing. So everything about the cohort is doing what they need, like what they say they're doing is they're giving you that opportunity to learn about these things, but they're opening doors for you that you don't even know are ready to be opened yet. So
beautiful. No, that's I'm very glad we touched on that topic. Well, we didn't touch on it. We went deep on it, and I'm glad we did, because that's a good one. And I have a heart for the consulting projects myself. I'm probably biased because I put the scopes of work together, but I always enjoy what's that?
No, it's fine.
Oh, okay. No, I'm supposed to. It's my baby. Well, I can't claim ownership of that baby. I raised part of it. So anyway, no. So I'm glad the consulting projects. I'm always excited when I see them work out really well and there's tangible outcomes that come from it. I think that's something that's James, you touched on the education side of things. I think that was something for me going through getting my bachelor's. Everything feels very sterile, I guess would be the word for it. It's just like, yeah, there's nothing really. There's book answers and there's answers you can search for and you can get a bit creative, but ultimately, nothing might really come from it. Probably nothing is going to come from it because everyone's just checking the blocks. But you guys took that extra step, and that's how it goes. You take that extra step, and opportunities appear and doors open that otherwise would have not even been in your line of sight. So, yeah, I'm glad you guys enjoyed that, and hopefully looking forward to having you guys in and talking more about this experience. I think what you guys talked about right there is perfect. So for those of you that are watching, James and Gary, we always have alumni come back in during our cohorts, and they're going to be coming in talking about their experiences in the consulting project, getting the upcoming cohorts ready to go for their experiences, and hopefully amplifying the outputs in the same way for the future cohorts, so their consulting projects go just as well. Well, I think we covered a lot of good ground, and I think we talked about some very important topics. But any closing comments from either of you before we wrap up this show?
Yeah, I'll just say regarding the catalyst. So I think we talked about a lot of different things, but I can only speak from my own personal experience, and it's less about being a transition program than for me. It was holistic. It was yeah, it was a transition program, and it teaches you how to speak the language and how to take these skills as a veteran and translate them into what people in the civilian world are doing, and how to say it in a way that people will comprehend outside of the military. But it was about educating us on different areas of business, and we've talked about a lot of those categories. But for me, I don't have any idea what HR people do. Really, we all have a basic understanding, but just to even be able to spend 2 hours or an hour talking to someone from that background, and then replicate that across every different topic that we discussed for 6 weeks. Now imagine how immensely valuable that is. Even for someone who may have some experience like myself, I was learning several new things every single night. So there's the education part of it. There's the hands-on experience that we just talked about with the consulting project, which was immensely valuable. But then there's the networking part of it as well. And it's not just, so all these people with all these subject matter experts in all these different areas, you're connecting with those people. And that's a open, imagine, as any veteran, there's always that immediate kind of kindred spirit connection there. Well, now you're connected with all these people. So now you have connections in all of these different sectors, who are completely open to, text me, call me, connect with me on LinkedIn. So now they're part of your network. You're connecting with all of the classmates that you're in the class with. You're connecting with the people from the Catalyst, which I can tell you, Dan, the guy who runs it, I've been invited to his house, and I know James has too. I've been to Blake's house, and so it's not, they're trying to get you in here and teach you some stuff, and then you never talk to them again. No, this is a lasting connection with all those different parts of the Catalyst. And then, like Blake said, now we're coming back as instructors to help, give our little perspective on where we've been and what we're doing to future classmates. So that's just even more veterans to connect to, who are either transitioning soon or already have, or maybe they're executives. So at every level. I think that to me was another part of it that when I signed up for the Catalyst, I didn't really fully understand. But now as a graduate, I think that's equally valuable to the hands-on experience and the education piece of it. So I'm extremely grateful. And then again, I was able to turn that into actual business conversations. So I think it is what you make of it. You can go through and get your education and move on, and that's fine. Or you can really dive head first and turn that into tangible, real life results, which is, it sounds like, at least in my class, what a lot of people are doing. So I'm grateful. I appreciate it. And I think it's more than just the education. It's all those things. It's more holistic. And I think not every program does that. So I think that's what makes it unique.
That's great, Gary. What about James? Closing comments from you?
Yeah, I just want to say pretty much how grateful I am that I had the opportunity to be a part of the Catalyst. Gary hit everything right on the head for that. Just everything that the Catalyst offers. Every single person in there, you have to make out what you want. You gotta go for what you want out of it. It's not just, again, you can go in, get your education, be like, all right, cool, whatever, I'm good. Or you can go in and you can really dive into everything that they're teaching you, everything, everybody around you and their backgrounds, and working with them and learning a little bit about them and what they do, and helping really add to your arsenal and, help compound all the information that you're learning just from the Catalyst, but the people around you as well. And then talking to these business partners of the Catalyst and learning about their businesses and what they're struggling with and how you can apply that to other areas and stuff. I mean, just everything that you are learning in there is encompassing you as a individual going through the Catalyst to be better at what you want to do in the civilian market. And the Catalyst is going to offer you multiple avenues of approach with that. It's not just like, hey, we drive a lot of it around consulting, but we have, the Catalyst has a lot of connections. It's got a lot of people that are there to help you get to where you want to go. And you don't always see that in every environment. You don't see that in a lot of the programs that people pay money to go through. They don't see it in colleges where they're like, hey, I want to go work for this company. Well, it's kind of about, honestly, it's about who you know. And really the Catalyst have a lot of people, everybody inside of the Catalyst program that works for it, or, Dan, for example. I mean, the connections alone with that are huge, and they'll have a way to get something that they want to go for. And the Catalyst offers a little bit of each different piece to be like, I didn't really like the financial thing. I kind of like the HR side, or maybe I like the marketing. And the Catalyst gives you the opportunity to dive into a little bit of each one of those to kind of really figure out, like, yeah, I didn't like this, or I like that, So I really appreciate the opportunity as somebody that's, going to be working on my transition probably in the next 12 months or so, kind of weighing out my options. It gave me an opportunity to really see what the other side's like.
Awesome. Well, this was a fantastic conversation, and likewise, I was very grateful for you guys coming through the course, and both of you made that leap in the first week, and that was cool to see. You jumped right in and said, yeah, that sounds like it, I'll do it. And there you were, and you guys performed excellently. And looking forward to seeing where you guys head in the future, and hopefully we can be a part of it. And yeah, if any of you viewers are interested more in the Catalyst program, we'll be sure to have a link in the description below. Share and like. I think I'm supposed to say that if this is on YouTube or something like that.
Like and subscribe.
Yeah, smash that like button, as the kids say it these days. Yeah, we've got cohorts running year round, and everything from undergraduate up to master's level. And if you're a veteran or a spouse of a veteran, or even someone in the business world that wants to learn the opposite direction and learn how to speak the veteran language so you can expand your reach and potential hires, then we've got a cohort for you. All you need to do is just reach out and contact one of us, and we'll be in touch. But Gary, James, always a pleasure, and looking forward to speaking with you more. But great to have you on, and talk to you soon. Have a great one.